Hello, it's Scott Newcomb with Zenvi AI, and welcome to the Systems Are Sexy podcast. Today's guest has spent over 4 decades in real estate, built and sold one of the largest brokerages in North America, and now works exclusively with broker owners to solve the one problem nobody wants to talk about: profitability. So while most of the industry focuses on volume, branding, and recruiting, he's reviewing hundreds of financial statements every month and seeing what's really happening behind the curtain. So we're going to talk about why 80% of brokers are losing money, where AI actually fits into brokerage economics, and what separates the top 5% from everyone else. So, Wayne, welcome to the show. How are we doing?
Thank you very much. I'm doing great, Scott. Thanks for having me. It's a real privilege and honor to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just think your story is really unique about what you want to talk about. And we chatted before this. I think a lot of brokers would find a lot of benefit from it. So I wanted to just talk about, you've been in real estate for over 40 years. And what I really like what you talk about is failing early. I feel like there's not enough talk about the challenges. We always talk about how everything's amazing, but everything's not amazing. So I'm just wondering, like, what did failure teach you about just about being a broker that most brokerages still haven't figured out yet?
Yeah, it's interesting. I couldn't agree with you more, Scott. I remember I was asked to present to a large group of brokers, and I didn't know the MC, and so they asked you, of course, to do a bio. So when I got up, we were behind the screen, ready to walk out on stage. He's got my bio, and he's, oh, thank goodness. He said, you got it down to one page. So many speakers. They're so, they got 10 pages, or they got these long bios, rather. He said, and I really appreciate, he said, it being so short. And I said, well, it was 10 pages, but we took all of the failures out and there was just a page left. It's probably true, there's a lot more. But here's the thing, Scott, I've never met anyone in any business that didn't fail their way to success. I think, as you said, the challenge is brokerage is the weirdest business. It's the only business where we don't sit down and talk about metrics and how to, as an industry, and how to succeed. If I'm an agent, I talk about my gross commission earnings, and we award agents on, they made, of course there's names, but it's based on gross commission, not based on how much we put in our pocket. Brokers, we tend to look at number of agents. Oh, I recruited some agents, right? And none of it's based on margin. And I don't know, most of us got into business to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. And something you had mentioned about you focus on broker owners, and I'm just wondering, why is ownership such a different game from being a top producing agent, for example?
There's a bunch of things. I mean, the first thing is that there's far less. Well, let's talk about the model first, Scott. The brokerage model is a fixed cost model. So when I was an agent, I had a car payment and I had to pay my personal expenses, but everything else was variable. When I'm a broker, the first thing I do is I go out and get a premises and probably take a mortgage on my house to outfit it. And I hire a bunch of staff. And so there's all this fixed cost, right? And so I'm in a tight margin, high fixed cost business where I don't have any formal education. If you go to brokerage school in any state, they're going to teach you the rules. And I always say it's like, it's asking a golf pro to teach you golf and he hands you the rule book, right? Never teach you how to swing the club. And so as brokers, we don't learn how to swing the club. And because we've got that high fixed cost, as an agent, hey, if I don't sell a house for a few months, I can more quickly solve the problem. And on the back end, if I want to drive revenue as an agent, I can do it more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. That the stat I mentioned in your intro about how many brokers lose money, why do you think that number is so high? Does it kind of go into what you were just saying about education, or is there more to it than that?
I think the more to it, Scott, is that people don't know what's possible. As you mentioned, I've been doing this for a long time, and I started as my first leadership role in brokerage back when we had 50-50. I hear old timers, Scott, in the business go, oh my gosh, the good old days, the 50-50, And I got to tell you, we make more money as brokers today than we did back in the good old days. Information isn't out there. It's possible to make, just like the agent business, it's possible to make more money today than ever. The brokerage business is exactly the same. It's possible today to make more money than ever in the brokerage business, but we never talk about it, right? We talk about, because there's so many people not making money, that's kind of takes the oxygen out of the room, if you will.
Yeah. When we spoke earlier, you had mentioned that you saw a brokerage that has a lot of agents, um, making a lot of money but zero profit. I'm wondering, see, fixed cost is part of that, or maybe a major part of that. But how does something like that happen?
I think one of the things that we focus on, I just got off of a meeting with a company on this, is a model. And the way it happens is they don't have in their head a model of how we're going to drive a margin. And so we look at a minimum margin target, and we call it the market adjusted margin target, Scott. And that margin, that profit margin, is what we want to accomplish in the brokerage. The difference between 100 and the margin, so let's say the margin's 25%, simple math says, hey, I've got 75 cents that I can invest in expenses. And they don't approach it that way. They approach it the opposite way, what I call zero-based budgeting. They go out and amass a bunch of expenses and then try to drive revenue with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you're speaking with a broker who's listening right now and wants a quick gut check. What's the first number on the P&L they should examine?
There's the number is margin, but when we look at a real estate brokerage, Scott, there's 5 economic drivers of a real estate brokerage, 5, not 6. And those are buttons to push or levers to pull.
Mhm.
Right. And so those are the numbers they need to focus on. And the 5 numbers are average agent contribution, which is the amount of margin I get from every man, woman, and child on average. Right. It's the number of people that I can recruit and retain. So those are 2. And some people say, well, Wayne, why not just do net? Well, because I need 2 strategies. I need a recruiting strategy and a retention strategy. The 4th driver is your expense ratios. So we got to focus on what percentage of money is going into each of those expense buckets, and 5 is ancillary income. And so those are the 5 numbers. If they want to be profitable, they have to know what those numbers ought to be and be driving strategy towards them.
Right. Do most brokers have that conversation as a team, or is it just something they just try to figure out as they go along?
So I think the problem lies in not knowing about the conversation. But if they know about the conversation and have a conversation with their team, it becomes simple. But if you ask most brokers, Scott, hey, what are the economic drivers of a brokerage? They say we got to recruit some people. It's funny for as long as I've been in real estate, the vast majority of real estate based coaching conversations revolve around recruiting. Just recruit more people and you'll be fine. And nothing in this business in this time, nothing could be farther from the truth.
Yeah. I wanted to switch and talk a little bit about AI because I know obviously that's an important conversation. And I know you had mentioned that you feel like the AI conversation is wrong for brokers. And I'm wondering, what are people misunderstanding about it?
I think that on the broker side, Scott, I hear people talking about AI as it applies to the consumer, and all of that stuff's important. There's 2 places that AI is going to impact the bottom line. And you asked me about why the conversation's wrong, because the conversation doesn't focus around how do we improve the bottom line of the brokerage,
Mhm.
right? And there's 2 sides, both the revenue and the expense side. If you look at brokerages, Scott, the 2 largest line items in any brokerage, I don't care where they are, is premises and wages. My belief is we're going to cut this year 50% of our wages out in most of our member brokerages. We have an in-house AI team. I mean, we're long on AI right now and helping brokers with AI. So we got expense rationalization that will actually help the agents get better service and will cut our costs in half. So cost is number 1. The other is lead gen. And it's interesting. We did a survey recently, and we took a large brokerage company, and we I think we used 20 listing agents, and we called the listing. We did a web inquiry on the listing agents. So first of all, 10 out of 20 we didn't hear back from. So it was 0. And the 10 that we did hear back from, the average response time was 2 days. Right now, the reason consumers go on the internet is because they want information.
Yep.
Oh, and generally, I don't know about you, but I want information now. I don't want it 2 days or even an hour from now, right? AI can solve that problem so easily, Scott, for brokers. And what I think we'll be able to do is pull back consumers from large aggregators. And this is a big statement. I'm going to make it here on your podcast. We can pull back from aggregators like Zillow because that's why, or realtor.com, because that's why the consumer goes there, because it's fast information, right? And you know what it reminds me of, Scott? 15 years ago, when I traveled a fair bit for my job. 15 years ago on Expedia or wherever and booked my flight. It was cheap and easy, right? And my hotel came from Expedia or hotels.com or an aggregator. Today, I go on the airline site. Today, I go on the hotel site. Why? Because on Bonvoy, they figured out how to make it better for me. I can pick my room, check in. I never even have to go to the front desk. I can check out. I can book my parking. All pick my room. I said that, or I get my key, right? And so I can do that all on the app. So what Bonvoy and the rest of the travel industry has done a really good job of doing is kicking the aggregator out of the middle. And I think AI can help us as brokers do the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. About the feedback. I just had a call earlier today with somebody that, because we do this for real estate agents and property tech and all these different companies as far as the response time. But even with, he was trying to find a plumber and, he reached out to three, one got back to him within an hour. The other ones to get back from for 3 days. Well, who do you think he's going to work with? It's the one that got back within an hour because he has a problem that he needs solved right away.
Yeah, you don't call a plumber because you're thinking about a job next week. It's like, hey,
Exactly.
my
And
toilet
there's
won't flush. I need somebody right now, right?
Exactly, and, and we do this and other people do where it's, inbound AI, where it'll just and it's not perfect, but it's responsive and it'll get back to you, and even if you said, "Hey, I don't have an answer, I'll get back with you in an hour or 2," that's who you're typically gonna go with, and sometimes that's all that matters when it's a commodity business. I'll just go with the first person as long as they have good reviews to go with.
100%. And to your point, even if the AI can't answer the question, it'll say, hey, well, we've passed this along to the qualified individual and they'll get back to you in X number of minutes or at this time or whatever, right? And so people have an expectation that, hey, I get a hold of this information.
Yep. Specifically for a brokerage, what role do you think gets affected the most because of AI?
Well, on the lead gen side, I think that's going to make their website so robust. It's funny, we have an application running on a as a test on a brokerage site. One of the things that somebody typed in is how close Realtor.com or Zillow, they had the walkability score. We typed in, well, on our AI, hey, how far is this from the closest bus stop? A 7-minute walk. The AI comes back with, right? That's what the consumer wants. Walkability score. What the heck is that? Nobody knows what the hell that is. So that's one place. The second place is in the back end, what I call the backstage. So we got front stage. We got the face-to-face contact with agents. There's escalation issues with deals, and AI can do that, but I don't recommend it. We need some human touch with these folks. But there's this whole back end of transaction processing where the agent has no human touch and AI can do it brilliantly with no errors. Obviously there's a small upfront investment for the application development, but it pales in comparison to what our wages or line looks like.
Yeah, that's a good point because I've had conversations with individual brokers and brokerage owners that'll say, I don't really want to implement AI because it takes away the human touch. And I go, I understand that on one aspect, but there's so many tasks that you're doing manually you don't need to be doing it. You could be much more efficient. And I feel like the real estate industry has a hard time really embracing that because for so long it's been very high touch.
Here's an example, Scott. Most of us start the transaction generally starts with a contract, and that contract ends up in somebody's hands, and then there's some kind of trade record, depending on the state, that's created, and it's created manually. And then from there, there's a bunch of letters that go out to title companies or attorneys, depending on the state again. All of that stuff can be done in one click with AI, right? And the agent has they just know that the title company got the commission statement and that the buyers and that the sellers that the commission statement went to the selling broker, whatever has to be done. They just know that occurred. They know how it occurred and they don't care how it occurred. That's all the back end stuff, backstage.
I had another one more question about AI. We talked about how the top 5% of realtors are broker owners, and I'm wondering, do you think AI is going to widen the gap between the 5% and everybody else, or do you think it's going to not have much of a difference?
That's a good question. I think it will widen the gap between those that adopt and those that don't, not necessarily the existing 5%. Right. It's interesting. I was with a group of team in a brokerage, and somebody was bold enough or brave enough, I guess, Scott, to say, I'm really worried because I'm worried that AI is going to take my job. And I thought it was a very heartfelt comment. And I said, AI is not going to take everyone's job, but it is going to take the job of the people who don't know how to use AI, right? And it's going to be the same with brokers. If you want to be one of the 5%, figure out AI. And what's interesting about AI, Scott, I don't know if it'd be interesting to hear your views on this, but in the old software world in 2000, let's say 2000 to 2020, where we had SaaS products and all that kind of stuff, there was a concept called the bleeding edge, and you always wanted to stay the heck off the bleeding edge. I don't think there is a bleeding edge with AI because it's so damn cheap to develop. Yeah, and everybody's freaked out about implementation because they got this idea of the bleeding edge in their brain, right? And there is no bleeding edge,
Yep.
and I think that's the big difference in this technical evolution, revolution.
No, I would agree with you. And it's evolving so quickly. I'm privy to some things that are happening that people are doing that are on the cutting edge, is a different type of edge, but just embracing Claude Code and Open Claude. And just there's a lot of tools that, like we could probably replicate our own CRM tool and our own KPI dashboards that we not necessarily need to use Salesforce and go high level these other brands because we can create ourselves and it's kind of in its infancy and not totally secure, but we may have a different conversation 6 months from now. And
There's
that's
no
just how quick
question.
it's moving.
There's no question. I think, if you're a student of the public markets, there's been a lot of obviously geopolitical events that's impacted the public markets, but there was one particular day, Scott, where the public markets took a large hit, 900-point hit on the Dow, and it was all based on a product that Anthropic released, and the markets realized, my gosh, SaaS is dead. you know and all the companies that you just mentioned, Salesforce, in the real estate business, we have Lone Wolf back end accounting system, extraordinarily expensive, very powerful. And every broker that I say, what's the value of this software to you, they tell me the reports, and I'll pop up a piece of AI and go, hey, we developed this report in like a week. How's this? Does this look oh my gosh, right? And it's a better quality report that we could have pulled out of a QuickBooks for $135 a month.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're bang on with your assessment, and I think your timeline's probably not far off. 6
Yeah,
months, it's gonna happen
I
fast.
know. I was going to ask you about something we chatted about earlier about you had mentioned that profitable brokers are hard to identify on social media.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if you kind of explain what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, our target group is profitable brokers, right? There's a whole raft of people in the real estate brokerage industry that are selling brokers. They don't mind, and we call them subsidizing brokers. There are some selling brokers who are profitable, but what the difference for us is profitable brokers, people that want to focus on profitability, and then what we call subsidizing brokers, people who don't mind selling a house every month to pay the rent because they're short. And it's very hard to tell the difference between the two.
Yeah. I'm wondering for your business, if people are listening, they're not really familiar with the problem that you saw. Maybe you could kind of talk a little bit about that and how clients are finding you.
You know, our biggest source of business is referral. It continues to outperform all of our business, which is humbling for us for sure. Our average length of time in program, Scott, is 7 years. So when people get involved with us, they stay for a long time because we deliver results for them. But the identifying people, we try our best to go out and, you asked me why people call us. There's 4 reasons people call us. They want to grow profitability. They want to buy or sell as 2 and 3. And one of the largest A books. We have a separate mergers and acquisition desk and we have one of the largest desks in the United States. And number 4 is they get into trouble. We do financial workouts. And so somebody gets in, particularly in these kinds of markets, they get themselves into a financial jam and we get them out of the jam.
Awesome. Last question here. Let's say we fast forward 3 years. What do you think the most profitable brokerages are going to be doing differently than they are today?
I think they're going to have cut their payroll in half. That's going to pick up 10% margin. They're going to continue to rationalize bricks and mortar. Bricks and mortar has become a smaller and smaller piece of the agent value proposition. I believe that's going to be the case. And I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation. 30 years ago, brokerage size was 25 as a big brokerage. Today, if you don't have 125, you're not making money today. And I think that number is going to grow. I think it's going to be 250. So going to be bigger brokerages.
Okay. If people want to learn more about your company or yourself, what's the best way to go about doing that?
We have a very simple website that talks about what we do, Scott, realestatebrokercoaching.com. And so go to realestatebrokercoaching.com. We've got a ton of free resources there. Certainly ways to contact us, but it's a lot of value there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Wayne. We appreciate the time today. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate it.